What's up? It's me, Kevin. I'm back with another video. So, this is going to be episode 3 of my 9 to 5 wage slave experience. So, in the previous episode, I talked about how I ended up getting what was arguably the best job of my life. You could basically say I was successful. As a matter of fact, it's like each year I made considerably more than the previous year. At the time, I was in the best shape of my life, arguably. I had a circle of friends. I had multiple, guess you could call them dating prospects. I was, people loved me at that job. I remember sometimes coming inside to help inside, and people would just light up at the sight of me. I was getting compliments left and right about how, my appearance, my hair. I had guys asking me for workout tips. I had girls were after me. I was getting invited to social events, parties. If I had an emergency at any point in my life, a $2,000 emergency, I could have just snapped my fingers and the problem would have been fixed. Car broke down, fixed. I could just whip out my wallet, make all my problems go away. And yet, despite all of that, never in my life did I feel any more like a slave. Every day, it was the same old shit. Getting up, going to work, come back home, maybe have enough time to squeeze in a quick workout. Which of course barely had time for that. And if I made time for that, I would likely lose sleep. Eventually it got to be too much for me. I ended up going part-time, cutting my hours significantly, just so that I could have a little more time for myself and to work on myself and my goals. I had a vision for my dream life, life where I could pursue my own path and turn my passion into a lifestyle, a sustainable way of living where I could live doing what I loved. And this was the farthest thing from that. In time, though, I ended up, through guilt or whatever, this weird feeling kind of just overtook me. And I ended up moving out, got an apartment. So here we are. By this point, it's 2021. May 2021. I moved into my new apartment, and I discovered it wasn't going to be as peaceful. It wasn't as peaceful as I thought it was going to be. Unfortunately, it's a small apartment. It's on the first floor. The walls might as well be made of paper because I could hear every single thing going on outside. I could hear a pin drop in that place. I could hear every slamming door, barking dog, people walking by in the street. I could hear their conversations. I could hear people cutting the grass. One time, I was woken up. Somebody was cutting the grass outside my place, and he like hit the wall or something, and it woke me up. So obviously, living in this apartment and working a night job was difficult. I couldn't get any sleep. It was worse than when I was living at the house, having to put up with all the fighting and all the drama going on. If I had ever considered going back to part-time, going back to full-time, this completely changed it. I was like, oh no, fuck no. Like, if I couldn't handle part-time, doing this stuff part-time and getting enough sleep, there's no way I'd be able to function in this place and work full-time. I mean, imagine me having to work a 12, 13, 14-hour night just to come home to this place and not be able to sleep anyway. But I tried to hang in there, tried to make it work. Like I mentioned before, you get into this position where you're so tired, you're so burnt out, you're so stressed that you'll start making some pretty stupid decisions. But it was getting to the point where I had I had this insomnia. I couldn't sleep. And I ended up calling out. I ended up missing a lot of days of work. I started calling out left and right. And I'm like, shit. I'm going to blow through all of my time off here, all of my sick time here. And then eventually, how long until I start getting in trouble? How long until I'm like, if I keep going at this rate, I'm going to get freaking fired or something. Like, this just isn't sustainable. But of course, being, the prideful asshole that I am, you'd think I would talk to somebody about it. But of course I didn't, because I didn't want to be seen as a little weak bitch who just complains. So I figure, I'll take care of this. I'll take care of this myself. I'll just find something else. Perhaps I could have transitioned to daytime and work days. But I was already tired. I was already sick and tired and fed up with the job. So I'm like, no, I want to do something else. And I'm tired of working these physical jobs. I've been doing it all my life. And after seeing that coworker who was constantly in pain, I'm like, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to work these physical jobs my whole life. And then when I worked at the lawn garden pet place, that fellow was telling me about how that story about the guy who said, "Oh, you can't work too hard," and he ended up changing his mind after he hurt himself big time, and he had undergone multiple surgeries. He realized he was wrong. So I'm like, Kevin, you don't want to be like that. Don't be like them. Don't kill yourself for these jobs. So I ended up developing or coming up with this rule, this little policy where the older I got, I wanted to slowly transition away from working these physical jobs. Work the hard stuff when you're young, but the older I got, I wanted to start using my muscles less, my brain a little bit more. So the older I get, less physical, focus on more mental, less physical. I ended up wanting to get into a position where, I was sitting down or at a desk, no longer doing, that shitty grunt work. And so with this in mind, by this point, I was 29 years old at the time, and I'm like, let's start looking for something a little less physical. Let's try to switch it up here. Try a new path. Change careers. Maybe an office job. Let's try working in an office. Let's see what we got here. Is there anything like some simple office job like data entry, just copy, paste, something. Working at a call center, I hate being on the phone. I hate talking to people on the phone. So I actually did. I started rage applying. I started applying for jobs left and right. I heard back from a lot of them, actually. I even got to a point where I was even offered a remote call center, remote customer service representative position. So in that job, I would have just been able to stay at my place all day, work from home, from the comfort of home, work normal hours during the day, not have to freaking kill myself. And also not have to drive around, not have to drive. And that's another thing I hate about some of these jobs is, is the freaking commute. Especially in the winter, because where I live, you've seen all the snow around in these videos of mine. We get a lot of snow here. And that's why for the past several years, all my vehicles have to be four-wheel drive. They have to be dependable in this kind of weather. But I hate it. I hate, having to get up every morning and brush my car and drive through a freaking snowstorm to get to work. And I've done it. I know one night it was like, we got 10 inches of snow total. And I drove through that. My work was a half an hour away from where I live. But driving through that, it's probably half-hour trip turns into a 45-minute trip. Driving through that shit at night, snow's coming down, got 10 freaking inches. And as I'm driving, I'm seeing all these cars, they're freaking stuck in the snow left and right, and I'm just like, I'm passing them, I'm like, oh, this sucks to be you guys. So, you know what? I've done it. I've done that shit. I've been doing that bullshit for years. I've seen how it is, I don't need to be doing that crap my whole life. Let's find something better. Let's find something easier. Save myself the stress. Save myself the wear and tear on my vehicle. So, I ended up applying for that job, for the remote job. I'm like, fuck it. Let's try it. Got a couple interviews. I actually got offered the job. However, I think I correctly realized I probably wasn't going to like that job either. Because, that job was just, you're stuck in that, I'd have been stuck in that apartment all day on my butt in front of a screen. I think it said you would take like 60, 70 phone calls per day. And being on the phone, that's one of my biggest weaknesses. I've always hated calling people, so having to deal with people and their freaking problems and getting yelled at on the phone, I'm like, for 8 hours a day, I don't think that would work for me. So I ended up turning that one down. But I started getting these offers from other types of jobs. I started getting offers, or I started getting like a lot of jobs that wanted to interview me. And I felt like there was a lot of stuff that I wasn't qualified for. And I kind of just was desperate for a job, any job that would just give me a freaking chance. And so when I start hearing back from some of these, or I even started getting offers from some of them, which later turned out a lot of them are scams. A lot of them you really gotta be careful. But I started looking at a lot of jobs, and I started noticing I was getting a lot of responses from. I started looking at sales jobs. You're probably thinking, oh boy, one of these. Sales never really was something that I was that interested in. What I was interested in was how much you could supposedly make with the commission and all that based on how much you sell. So I ended up looking at these jobs, these sales jobs, selling life insurance. So I'm like, shit, I saw how much these guys can supposedly make. They can make like 6 figures doing this. I'm like, shit, let me try this. For once, it's not a job where I have to physically bust my ass. I get to use my brain. And at the time, I was at the most confident. At the time, I was at the most confident I ever had been in my whole life. I really had this attitude where it's like I can do whatever, I can do anything if I put my mind to it. So while I was a little, because you got to be outgoing. I'm a shy introvert, so I knew this was gonna require me getting out of my comfort zone a little. But I'm like, shit, it's a chance to try something new, learn some new skills, make some real money. I was making good money at the time, but I'm like, why stop there? I ended up getting offered a position. It's basically an insurance agent. I would have to go do some things. I would have to get my license, take a course. I had to take all these online courses, and then actually go take an exam and get my license so that I could sell insurance. And as soon as I got that offer, I'm like, yes, I'm off the hook. I got a job lined up. So upon doing that, I'm like, I can finally quit my annoying, shitty, soul-sucking warehouse job. So that's what I did. I wrote a little letter, a resignation letter. I ended up putting in my 2 weeks. I remember my last night at that job. Just as the night was coming to an end, and I was preparing to leave, say goodbye to everybody, our manager came out and he had some horrible news. I noticed that the older gentleman who used to work with us wasn't with us. He had been out of work for some time. I figured he was sick or injured or something. He had been out of work for a few weeks. And unfortunately our manager gave us the news that He died. And so going back, this was the guy who showed up every day. He was constantly in pain, had undergone several surgeries. The very man who I said I didn't want to be like. And this man was a tale of caution. Worked his butt off his whole life. And he never even made it to retirement. He died doing this shit. And I'm just like, damn. And I remember walking out of that place, and I had this feeling, it was this feeling of just like triumph, of freedom. Like I was breaking out of this jail. And I was convinced I would never again walk through those halls, walk through that place. I was walking out of that place, I felt like a free man. I had the rest of my life ahead of me. I could only go up. I could only move on up from there. I had this new job, this new thing lined up. Gonna be an insurance agent. Sell the insurance, make this money. Well, I ended up getting kind of ghosted. I ended up losing contact with my recruiter. So I ended up basically quitting a job, thinking I had another one lined up, and then I didn't. So now I'm just like, shit, fuck it. At the time, I had a lot of money saved up. I'm like, I'm a smart guy. I can figure this shit out. I have enough to survive. I had been diligent. I worked my butt off. I saved all this money. I had a full emergency fund. So let me see if I can make it out. Make it on my own here. Living on my own. Pretty much now jobless, now unemployed. So I'm like, I can figure it out. I can find something else. Well, I ended up getting another insurance job. Which, long story short, ended up being a complete scam, a complete pyramid scheme. I mean, and in those are absolutely freaking notorious. I mean, the majority of people, they lose money getting into those things. But at the time, like I said, I was totally delusional. I thought I could handle anything. I thought I could be that, that one small percent of people that make it. In my gut, like deep down, I knew this is a bad idea, Kev. You shouldn't be doing this. Like, you can tell, I've always had a strong intuition, like deep down, like you think about something, and when you feel like it ain't right, you just know. Like you're just not at peace. You can explain it as much as you want and try to rationalize your decision. But you can't you feel this, it's like this hole inside of you, like this sinking feeling that you get. Where it's like deep down, you just know, oh, you just fucked up. Just like they say, always listen to your gut. Something doesn't feel right, don't just dismiss it. this insurance job that I did end up getting this. I did end up getting recruited, and I did end up. I studied my butt off for several days, taking these online classes, and then I took an exam. I had to take an exam. I ended up getting my license to sell insurance. I was basically remote, so pretty much, talking to my mentor, talking to like my manager or whatever. It was pretty much all on Zoom. It was all online. This was probably the most uncomfortable, and scariest shit I ever did. Like of all the jobs and all the things I ever done, that was probably the absolute worst. But basically, my day was essentially getting up in the morning, and then from 8 o'clock in the morning, I had a bunch of leads, basically a bunch of people who supposedly showed an interest in getting life insurance. And so basically, I had to call a bunch of people. So I'm calling like, I think I had like 100 people I had to call. Just calling people all freaking day, trying to get them to. Oh, it was bad. But basically, I would call them and try to book an appointment to kind of get a way to sit down with them and discuss different options, different, figure out what their needs are. And it was bad. Like it was bad. I mean, I'm kind of a sensitive guy, so calling people and getting hung up on, or getting having people tell me, "Oh, I'm not interested." Slam. Yeah, you gotta have a thick skin for that kind of thing. You gotta have this almost annoying persistence, which I just don't. I don't have. I'm not that kind of guy who's gonna like try to push you. All these pushy sales tactics, and just I'm not like that. I remember it was so bad because it's like I had to call these people, get hung up on a regular basis. I actually did get a couple. I actually did manage to book a couple of appointments. I actually did get to meet a few people, and sit down and talk with them. It was probably the most uncomfortable thing I ever did. So I would drive around. I ended up sitting down, meeting with a couple people, asking them a few questions, filling out these forms together, filling out applications, trying to paint a picture of their financial situation, trying to find a policy that works for them, that's within their budget. It's crazy feeling, me. It's like I felt like, man, I felt like, what the fuck am I doing? So I ended up having some really bad luck doing this. Well, I was able to get a couple of appointments and sit down with a couple of people. I was able to actually write them some policies. But both times, something went wrong. There was something I didn't do right, and I ended up not getting paid for it. I ended up not getting. I don't know, it was ridiculous. So it was one of those situations where, I put a lot of time in it. I drove around and wasted a lot of gas. Sat down with these people. came this close. To making that sale. And there was always one little detail that ruined everything. Like for once, for whatever reason, I guess, the underwriters, they wouldn't accept this one policy because something about the beneficiary, it was some nonsense. So I ended up getting nothing out of that. And then the lady ended up calling me anyway because she wanted to cancel anyway. And then there was this other guy who it's like I was sitting down with, this close to selling them the, this close to making the sale. And I probably would have made some pretty good money off that. I probably would have made like, $1,500 off of that sale alone. But I guess it was something with his history that disqualified him. All in all, I realized, I discovered I was pretty much not cut out for this shit. I ended up hating that even more than my previous job. And I'm like, oh shit. Now what? And at the time, I also tried door dashing. I would do DoorDash. Couldn't stand it. That was another thing where I would just drive around, waste a lot of gas. Never really got good at it. Couldn't stand it. I don't know. I just don't like doing that stuff. Because with that, I feel like there is a little bit more nuance. With that, you actually have to be smart about what kind of orders you take. Because I mean, you can really waste your freaking time just driving around not making shit. With that, you're an independent contractor. With that, there's no benefits. With that, you're using your own vehicle, putting on all this wear and tear on your vehicle. You might have a good day where you make some good money, and then you might have days which really suck. So, a few months had passed since I left my job at this point, and I was basically just living off of savings. I was living off of all the money I had saved. Wasn't making shit doing DoorDash. I just couldn't stand that. The insurance thing wasn't going so well. I couldn't stand doing that either. I'm like, I'm not cut out for all this stuff. I ended up biting off way more than I could chew. I knew I fucked up. I kind of had this mentality that, I could just do anything. And I could. If I really was willing to put in the work and do it. But I'd never been more miserable. I was like, wow. It's like I thought working at my job was bad. And it's like I ended up in a situation that was even worse. I'm like, this is even worse. Because here it's like I don't get paid for just showing up. Here it's like I really have to freaking grind. There's a lot of nuance and there's so many variables that go into how much I make. You could have slow days where you make jack shit. At least at the job, you get paid just for being there. You just show up. You could be the best worker, you could be the worst worker. You could be the laziest son of a bitch there. You half-ass everything. Make just as much as the hardest worker. Not to mention, at least you have coworkers. At least you're not alone. You have people you can talk to, people who you get along with. Like I said, I was popular. I mean, people liked me. I was getting complimented left and right. I always had that. That was one of the things that kept me sane all those years working at that job, was just having those coworkers, having that support, knowing that I wasn't alone in that shit. Whether I was lifting those boxes, loading those trucks, or outside in the freezing cold and the pouring rain at night, driving those trailers around, I wasn't alone. But out here in this place, in this world, in that apartment by myself, when I was calling those leads in that insurance job, I was alone. When I was door dashing, trying to door dash all day, I was alone. I was by myself. I had nobody to talk to. And that kind of made the day just go by so much slower. And in that moment, I realized how much shit I had taken for granted. So I'm like, well, seems I'm not ready. I would love to break free of the 9 to 5, the rat race. Because I was absolutely miserable in that position. I mean, I used to break down. I mean, I had nights where I would just break down. I even had nights where I kind of wondered what was the point. I kind of started to wish I had never been born at that point. I'm like, is this all there is? I had a couple side hustles that I was working on, but they weren't really making me enough. I wasn't making enough on these side hustles to actually support living on my own. And then I tried gig work, couldn't stand it. Gig work for me, that's even worse. Like freaking Uber, DoorDash, I can't stand that shit. That's even worse than working a job for me. I had the desire to be on my own and build my own thing, but I realized I left too soon. I left too early. I wasn't ready. Funny how in no time at all I ended up in the exact same position that I wanted to avoid. Here I was in the freaking rat race, and my money was running out. I had to find something. I had to find a way to make money. I tried. Gig work didn't work. This insurance, which ended up being like I said, ended up being a total pyramid scheme because it was based largely off of recruiting. And once I grew, I could start recruiting other people as well, and basically create like a whole downline and make money off of them as well. I ended up leaving that. I left that. I realized that wasn't for me. So here I was in this apartment, running out of money, going broke, blowing through my reserves. All that money I worked so hard to save, to earn, to save. And I realized I had to make a choice. I realized this was my time where I had to humble myself and realize, I left too early. I wasn't ready. So I ended up having to look for another job. I looked at some places, got a lot of rejections, a lot of jobs that just didn't interest me as well. I didn't pursue. I ended up going back to the job that I left. I ended up going back and getting rehired. Another mistake. This is why they say you shouldn't go back to old jobs. But I ended up going back. I ended up going back to FedEx. Now with that job, I didn't just get my original position back. I had to start over again from the beginning as a regular package handler. And that meant making the package handler rate. So all my experience, all my previous, that didn't have any meaning. That didn't mean shit. Didn't mean shit. So I had to go back, start all over from scratch, bottom of the barrel package handler. And once again, they put me in loading those freaking trucks. So I'm like, okay, that's whatever. I'll just do what I did last time. I'll earn my way back up. I'll work my way back up, get promoted again, maybe try something else this time. I had experience. I could have been a trainer. I mean, trainer was another position where you basically train all of the new people who come in. I had the experience. I was a pretty good worker. I was a pretty good loader at the time. So I'm like, shit, let me try that. And it's like they made about the same as switchers. So I'm like, I'll try that this time. Now for there, you have to, I guess there was this online portal that you had to use in order to, for instance, set up your direct deposit or apply for jobs. So, I'll just go to HR, I'll log in, and it had to be done there. You couldn't do it on your phone, you couldn't do it at home. You had to specifically be in the office, in the HR office, at one of their computers to log into this online portal so that you can set up your direct deposit and apply for jobs. So, okay, cool. I'll do that. I'll do that as soon as possible so that I can get out of this and move up. Well, I couldn't get in for some reason. And I'm like, what the hell? So I had some of the trainers try to help me. They couldn't figure it out. I spoke over the next, this went on for weeks, this went on for months. I spoke to multiple managers at multiple levels. I spoke with HR, and nobody could figure this out. And unfortunately, this was the only way that I could get direct deposit. This was the only way that I could apply for another position. The only way I could do it. And I actually talked to my mom about this. And of course, she's a boomer. She doesn't get it. She's kind of like, oh, well, you should talk to whoever the manager is, or, talk to the guy you used to work with before. And I'm like, you don't get it. Everything is online nowadays. Everything has to be done a certain way. Walking out into the fucking yard and trying to talk to the manager, he can't help me. It isn't going to change shit. It isn't going to do it. Not to mention they only hire internally. So I have to do it a certain way. I have to do it internally at one of those laptops. And for whatever reason, I think it was because I was a rehire or something, it wouldn't work. So here I was stuck as, a part-time loader, making a part-time. I couldn't even go full-time and get the extra $1 per hour that comes with that. So I'm coming in, working one sort, 3-4 hours per day. Try to do it as much as I can stand. And keep in mind, I had done this before in the past, but at this point, I was sick and tired of it. I was like, because of course they had me doing the hardest job loading the trucks, and then next thing you know, they had me loading, basically picking a belt. So on the floor in that wing, there's a big conveyor belt where all the big heavy 100-pound packages come down on. So they had me pulling those shits off and bringing them to their designated trailers, whatever destination, the correct destination. So I had to stand in front of this big belt, wait for the packages to come down, grab them, and some of these shits, they're like 4, 5, 6 feet long, and they can weigh like 100 freaking pounds. So I'm grabbing these shits by myself, pulling them off the belt, and carrying them over and dropping them on these rollers, or just putting them in the trailers myself. And I have a number of trailers I have to watch. I got to get the correct packages and put them in the correct trailer. But that means I got to walk. I have a certain amount of area that I have to cover. So I'm walking up and down, covering this whole area, picking up these heavy ass packages. And sometimes there might be a few coming down. Sometimes it's overwhelming, and it's like you literally have to be in 10 places at once. For that job, you need to be strong. You need to be fast, and you need to be a master of timing. You need to be in the right place at the right time. If you're in the wrong spot, you'll miss a fucking package. You could be at this door, and you might get the correct package there, but you miss this other package. By the time, you got to think ahead. You got to plan ahead. You got to be in the... It was a freaking game. It's like you had to turn it into a fucking game where it's just like... So that's what I was doing. And of course, I did start showing up. So I was basically working bare minimum 3 days a week. I could work probably up to 5 or 6. So I'm like, okay. Well, obviously, if you want to make more money, you got to work more days. But of course, there's this weird thing that I noticed that, like, earlier in the week, it was significantly worse. And then as the week progressed, it got easier and easier each day. Like, the workload was, like, less and less and less. It's like, Sunday was probably the easiest freaking day to work. It was the slowest day. Sunday, it was nice and easy. You just hang out, watch the belt. You'll have a few packages come down here and there. But it was never anything I couldn't handle. Friday, Saturday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday was kind of in the middle. It was pretty steady work. Wasn't too slow. Wednesday and Thursday was like absolute nightmare. I mean, you'd get fucking that whole belt would just be loaded with packages coming down at the same time. It's like, how can I be in all these places at once? How can I get all these 100-pound, 50, 60-pound packages? How can I do it without missing shit? It was crazy. It was just ridiculous. But I tried my best. I did my best. And all the while I was trying to get this thing fixed. I was trying to get this access to this portal so that I could finally move up and apply for a better position and not be stuck doing this crap. Making $16 an hour in 2022. And long story short, I tried. I was there for 7 months. And no matter who I talked to, how many people I talked to, it just wasn't. I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't get into that portal. Nobody wanted to give me a chance. Didn't matter who I fucking talked to. So I realized I was stuck. I was stuck in this position. Stuck loading these freaking trucks. You could argue that, well, you just gotta work harder. Just gotta work harder. Work more hours. Work as much as you can. But the way I saw, I'm a very pragmatic person. The way I saw, I'm like, this is fucking retarded. Why would I show up and work the hardest job in the place for the lowest pay? And I did the math. And I basically would have made probably half as much as what I had made before as a switcher full time. And I would have been doing a whole hell of a lot more work physically. Way more of a toll on my body. I'm like, man, my old job was way better. Why the fuck would I try doing that? Making literally half of what I made before. But now I'm on my own, living in a freaking apartment, paying rent now. I did the math, and the math just wasn't adding up. I'm like, my budget, I'm like, this isn't gonna work. This is not gonna be sustainable. I'm not gonna break my fucking back in this place just to be broke and pay bills. I gotta find something else. So I started searching. I realized there was no future for me at this place anymore. I had that one chance, I blew it. Tried coming back. It just wasn't the same anymore. And I wasn't gonna fucking bleed just to get nowhere and spin my wheels. You could say, oh, well, that's life. You shouldn't have fucking done it. I'm sure a lot of you would be waving the finger. Well, you made a mistake. You fucked up, pal. Now you gotta pay the price. Maybe. Maybe there's consequences. Of course there's consequences for our actions. But at least give me a fighting chance here. Like I said, I was looking at this thing and it wasn't making sense from a financial perspective. Even if I worked 40 hours, 50 hours, for the lowest rate, for $16 an hour, not being able to move up, not being able to get full time and the extra benefits and the extra dollar per hour, not being able to move up in the company, get my old job back or another position that paid more and that would make my life more sustainable. So I wasn't going to do it. I'm like, it doesn't make sense. It's retarded. If I can't fix this situation, I'm out of here. I'm not going to put up with this crap. Meanwhile, I was blowing through I ended up, as I was trying to solve all this, I ended up, blowing through a lot of my reserves. I ended up falling into a deep financial hole. I had a credit card and I ended up racking up a whole bunch of credit card debt. Thinking that as soon as I get this figured out, as soon as I get this job back and I get this figured out, I'll be able to pay this all off, no problem. So, I was basically choosing the easy route. Oh, just, put it on my credit card. Buying shit I can't afford, I couldn't afford at the time. Thinking that, oh, this is just temporary. As soon as I get back on track, I can turn it all around in no time. But unfortunately, that never came. That opportunity never came. And I realized, I'm getting destroyed. And like I wasn't gonna, break my back at that job to try to make enough. So I'm like, I need something better. So I ended up applying again. I ended up applying for a multitude of other jobs, got a lot of rejections, and no matter what, I couldn't get anything that was at least 20 an hour. I'm like, I need to make at least 20 an hour. I need to make at least 4K a week, a month, if I'm going to have any chance, of getting ahead. And I just couldn't get anything. At least not that paid that much. Even jobs that I believed I was absolutely qualified for, I couldn't get them. Got a lot of rejections, didn't hear back from anyone. And I was getting so pissed off. So I started applying for everything, anything and everything. And of course, sometimes I did getting a job, but it ended up being this really, it didn't pay the best. But it was a job working at a call center. However, I wouldn't just be at a desk all day making phone calls. I was actually it was an interesting job. It was basically I would conduct digital fingerprinting for childcare. Basically what that means is, in my state, if you want to work at a daycare center or open a daycare yourself, anything involving looking after other people's children and childcare, you have to have a background check. And part of that background check is, of course, fingerprints. And so there's this organization, the Office of Early Childhood, and I would basically conduct fingerprinting sessions for them on their behalf. So I'm like, this sounds easy. It didn't pay the best, but the job sounded relatively easy. I would probably make, if anything, it was a full-time job, I would probably make more at this place. Just literally just taking people's fingerprints. So I was thinking outside the box. I was being a little more creative. I'm like, I've seen what I'm good at. I've seen what I suck at. I think I'm done with these warehouse jobs. I want to try something else. I want to try something that's not going to break up, freaking kill my body. The pay at the time wasn't that great. However, there was a mileage reimbursement. There was a lot of travel in that job. So I wouldn't be stuck in an office all day. In that job, you actually get to travel all over the state and conduct fingerprinting sessions at many different places, such as libraries, YMCA's, community centers statewide. So a lot of that job was simply me behind the wheel or behind the screen. So I'm like, fuck it. And I would also get a reimbursement for the mileage that I had to put just driving in my own vehicle. So you got 2 bi-weekly paychecks, and then you get the mileage check as well. So that's 3 checks per month. So I'm like, okay, cool. So I ended up getting that job. So that job was interesting. It had its pros and its cons. And now I'm not even, I used to make fun of office workers. I used to think they were just, oh, this is so easy, your job's so easy, I used to think warehouse jobs were so much worse, because they're physical. I used to think people who sat down all day had it easy in a nice, cozy, air-conditioned room, while people who work retail or work warehouse jobs are out there sweating in the yard, sweating in the trailers, busting their asses, getting worked like slaves. But I was introduced to mental exhaustion at this job. When you work an office job, it's much more mentally taxing. And that shit, I wasn't used to that. Like, I would never imagine myself getting so tired just from making phone calls, just from sitting behind a computer all day, just from doing data entry, copy paste, filling out forms online, looking at spreadsheets, and a whole lot of sitting in traffic. But probably the worst, besides being on the phone, is having to deal with the toxicity and the absolute backstabbing nature of working in a job like that. At least in a warehouse, for the most part, or other jobs that I've worked, we all kind of got along. We kind of work together as a team. But once you're in an office position, it's like people will throw you under the fucking bus. I had to deal with some of the most insufferable, petty assholes I've ever known. I mean, you got people who talk down to you like you're a know-nothing, like you're a child, like you're an idiot. They think they know best. They think they can do no wrong. They think it's funny to watch you mess up, watch you fail. Or when they try to embarrass you in front of the clients, make you look like an idiot in front of the people you're trying to provide a service to. It can be very irritating, especially when you and this person are assigned to a particular location. You have to go travel together and work as a team. You have to work with this idiot all day who is like, they have to criticize every little thing you do. Oh, no, not like that. Like this. No, you're doing this wrong. You're doing this wrong. You're doing this too much. It's like, shut the fuck up. That job, for the most part, was pretty, like I said, besides being on the phone, calling people, trying to ask them a bunch of questions, collect information. Like these projects where you had to call these daycare centers, a whole bunch of daycare centers you got to call, and you got to ask them a whole bunch of questions and fill out these forms, and on a lot of multitasking. Those were annoying. And then having to deal with, like I said, my insufferable coworkers and all the backstabbing. That's a pain. But there were some perks. Like when we were off site, or we were at a location, we were at a library, just chilling in the library or chilling at a YMCA. Let's say there's some gaps in our appointments, because every client, every person we fingerprinted would book an appointment, so they would come in at certain times. We would usually have the appointments set spread about 15 minutes apart. Some days we had slow days where we didn't have that many clients coming in, so there was a lot of downtime. a lot of time to just chill, relax, hang out on my phone, hang out, talk with some of my coworkers. It was nice. It was one of those, one of those jobs where you kind of just, it could be really chill sometimes. You just maybe go out, maybe get something to eat, grab some lunch during the downtime. So it wasn't all bad. So I was there for a while. I was there for probably, oh, and we ended up moving to another building. And that building had a gym, had a free gym. So that was great. Show up, go to work. End of the day, you go to that gym, get a workout in. So that was good. I didn't mind that. But ultimately, like so many jobs, it gets to a point where the cons start to outweigh the pros. I was making at that job just enough. It was full time. I was making just enough to scrape by, though not much more. And I was still in a lot of debt. I accumulated so much debt from that previous situation. I came very close. I paid almost a good amount of it off. I was almost there. But I couldn't quite seem to get rid of it all. I was so close. About 2/3, I was able to pay off 2/3 of it while working this job, taking advantage of that extra check, that mileage check. But it just wasn't enough to completely get rid of it all. And debt, credit card debt, it feels like a virus, really. It's almost like, I almost feel like you have to just get rid of it completely in its entirety. It's like when you're sick and you have a virus or something and you end up taking some antibiotics, and they say you want to keep taking them, take them all, even if you start feeling better. Because if you stop, that shit can come back. That virus can freaking come back. So even though you've weakened it, you got to completely annihilate. You got to completely get rid of it. And I feel like it's kind of the same thing. It was kind of the same thing with my situation, where it's like I'd be doing really good, I'd pay off a crap ton of it, but with the interest rates and all this other crap. I mean, at the mat, I had like, it's like one extra purchase or one little emergency could set you back and have you falling right back into debt. So it's just like, damn it. But ultimately, in time, I got tired of the job. Got tired of the idiots. Got tired of the phone calls. And also, during this job, I realized not only was I getting sick a lot more often, not only was I feeling a lot more, because when I first started this job, while it had its pros and cons, there was really this weird feeling like I just didn't really belong there. I'm like, especially the kind of people who I worked with there, I just felt like I didn't belong in that kind of place. It was kind of just a temporary placeholder for me. I had no intention to actually stay there and make this into a career. This was just a stepping stone, not a stepping stone, but just a placeholder for now while I try to figure out my situation. I was still reeling from that past experience at the other job, and falling into all that debt and that whole like financial struggle I went through really fucked up with my mind. So I felt totally lost in the world. I was like, I had no idea where the hell I could go from here. You know, it's like I left what was basically the best job I ever had. And I've been making like shit ever since. And I'm at this place and it's like I feel like I don't belong here. I feel lost. And it's like I feel like, you know, I was surviving. I wasn't actually thriving in this office position. And I felt like I was surrounded by people who just weren't like me. Like I didn't belong. I was like the wrong demographic. You know, I was a young man. And let's just say in this job, it was mostly older women. The majority of people who were there were women. So I'm like, you know, like, why am I here? What am I doing? There were a couple of guys there, you know. But a lot of them, I mean, there were a couple I was friendly with, but most of the other guys there, I didn't really like, I didn't really respect. I'm kind of like, they seemed very just passive, I guess you could say. You know, kind of, they kind of had this NPC energy about them. They're just very boring. You know, they had no real substance to them. You know, it's just I got too much. I probably had more energy than all of them combined. And that was another thing. It had working in an office is such a slow paced, you know, lazy kind of energy. I wasn't used to them. I was used to working fast paced jobs where you're on your feet, you're moving around. But everybody here just seemed so slothful, so lethargic, and they just whined and complained about the most pathetic things. Oh, it's cold. They didn't have the freaking energy to take the freaking stairs, taking the elevator up every day. And everybody there was all like, you know, kind of fat. I got fat working there. That was another thing I started realizing it was a lot easier for me to put on weight. Packing on the pounds. I had like a roundy face going on. Waistline blew up. I could not lose the weight. And then everybody and their mother at that place was trying to like feed me. They're trying to like give me their food, give me their nasty junk food. Here, you want some? You want some? There was one lady, she was so weird. She would always like, whenever we would go fingerprinting at a place, she would always order food and like absolutely insist that she wanted to get me food. And I'm like, no, 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 I'm good, I'm good. And that lady never took no for an answer. She's like, oh no, I got you. I'll get you something. Or she'd like leave food on my desk, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I don't want this. It's like these people are conspiring to turn me into a freaking fat ass here. It's like I already gained so much weight at that point. And it's just like, you know, it's like these people didn't really see me like when I used to work in the warehouse when I was in the best shape of my life, and now it's like I'm just falling apart. So I ended up getting another job. And then basically from late 2023 all through 2024 was basically the whole past year just me been job hopping from one job to the next. Some jobs I was probably only at for like maybe a month tops, because they were just so fucking awful. I mean, now, I guess I'm doing alright. I'm currently working at Amazon. It's alright, it gives me a decent work 4 days a week, 10-hour shifts. I get 3 days off. It gives me 4 days to really grind hard, stay in shape, get my steps in, hit up the gym. On those days, that's all I really need to do. Just get up, show up, go to work, get my steps in, get my workout in, and get my meal in. Simple. And then my 3 days off, that's my me time. That's my time to work on myself, to work on my goals. Part of that is this whole YouTube thing, making these videos. Try to get out here and make these. It's time to work on my Etsy store. Forge my bracelets, my hooks, my copper bowls. List them online. Sell those things. Constantly looking for upgrades, ways to improve my shop. I'm at the point where, I see myself as a small business. Even though I'm just doing it on the side currently, I have to treat it like a business. So I'm in a position where I have a pretty good amount of work-life balance. I'm making enough at this point where I can save, I can pay off this debt. I just paid off my car not too long ago. So that's one less thing I have to worry about. So I got from now until this thing finally shits the bed. But yeah, at this point, it's pretty much, building my dream, building up my money. It's been a crazy road. From years of just obscurity, working these dead-end jobs, not doing shit, not working on myself, to my transitional phase to where I was making the most money I ever had. I was at my most successful. But I realized I couldn't stay that way. I realized I was meant for more. I desired something more. And I believe I'm not here to simply consume. I'm not some simple hamster in a wheel, a cog in the machine. I'm an intelligent being. I'm a living soul. I'm a creator. That's what I like to do. I like to build things. I like to make things. I like to create. Use my natural gifts, my natural talent, instead of just wasting it, being wasted on labor. I'm not a machine. I'm not a robot. I'm not really one for gratitude. Like I don't really do the whole I don't really write. I don't really have a gratitude journal. I don't write. I don't believe in pointlessly expressing gratitude for stupid, mundane things. Oh, I'm grateful to be breathing. Look, I'm grateful when I have something to be grateful for. I'm proud when I have something to be proud of. I'm grateful and proud I paid off my car. I'm grateful and proud that I'm working on myself, working on building my body, training, showing up to the gym. I'm grateful and proud that I have a side hustle, that I have an online store where I make things that I like, that I care about, and that other people like as well. That I actually can create things of value that people desire. Actual real things to be grateful for. not just my own mundane existence. This is why I ask myself, what have I actually done that's good? What do I actually have to provide? And maybe, who knows, maybe you'll find this useful. But I think I'm in a position now where if I just show up and stick with the plan, I have a plan, I have a vision. I just gotta show up and I gotta stick with it. Don't fall off. I'm so close. At my lowest point, I was fucking jobless and $12,000 in debt. And I've paid off the majority of that. I got depressed. I got fat. I lost the weight. I lost all my strength. Not training, not going to the gym. I'm gaining it back. You know, this is really my time to lock the fuck in. I'm convinced that if I just stick to the plan, I can be debt free by the end of the year. Before that, within months. And then I can invest. I can invest in myself. I can invest in my business. I can improve my shop. I can take classes. I can learn new skills. I can improve in my craft. I can make better products. I can provide more value. I'll be in a position where I can provide more value. So, I guess that's it. That's about it. That's pretty much my whole work history. All of the BS I went through, and kind of where I am now. So, that's all for now. Take care. Until next time.